Being a parent can be really challenging. It's normal to feel uncertain about whether you're doing the right things to raise healthy and happy children. That's why Child and Family Resource Network focuses on connecting pregnant parents and those with kids under the age of 5 with free support services to help them build confidence in their parenting journey. Everyone deserves to have someone they can turn to for support with parenting. Visit childandfamilyresourcenetwork.org today.
RotoGrinders Daily Fantasy Football podcasts are presented by Yahoo Sports Daily Fantasy. Be sure to check out Yahoo this Sunday for another $1 Million Baller contest for Week 17. This is a $20 entry, 10 entry max tournament, and once again, Yahoo is guaranteeing $250,000 in overlay for this contest. It's the best value in all of DFS, so be sure to check them out this Sunday and use promo code GRINDERS30 for a $30 matching bonus on that first deposit. If you are playing DFS this Week 17, give them a look. That's Yahoo Sports Daily Fantasy.
Everybody, what is going on? How's everybody doing? It is time for the Week 17 version. We made it, guys. We have finally made it. The Week 17 version of the Rotoworld RotoGrinders DFS Pick 6. I'm Eric Cranen, as I have been done with every single week. I'm joined by Evan Silva, Rich Hribar. Evan, how we doing, buddy?
Good. This is like the least prepared that I'll be all season. I drove start on Sunday night. I usually really start hitting it hard, but this Sunday night I had to drive. I go to St. Louis, and then Monday, just got nothing done, and Tuesday barely got anything done. Reeves, of course, he's on the usual track, right? You didn't really lose anything.
No, I did, man. Lost my Monday and Tuesday are my heavy work days, so obviously it's Christmas Eve and Tuesday being Christmas. I lost all of my Head Start jump time. My article usually comes out Wednesdays. I told our boss that said, no way, man, it's gonna be Friday this week.
Okay. Reed's laying down the law. He ain't messing around. I love it. Yeah, it's a little bit weird with Week 17. Of course, every single year we try and be as prepared as we can be, but there are curveballs every single year with this. Like we're gonna do our best, but make sure you pay attention this week, especially to kind of news later on in the week, because we find out, so and so is sitting. Like, that's stuff you need to be paying attention to. So make sure you're doing that later in the week. Also, a quick announcement before we jump into some games. You guys asked for it. We're going to deliver. We are going to have playoff DFS Pick 6 starting next week. So January 2nd, mark your calendars. I think we're going to be about an hour or two, maybe 3 hours sooner. We're going to make sure we post about it. But, you want playoff DFS Pick 6? You have got playoff DFS Pick 6. So it's going to be a good time all around. So let's go ahead and jump into this slate, because our first game is a game between two teams that I get wrong every single time they're on the slate. So I'm glad it's on here, and I'm glad that I have to host and not give advice, because if I had to give advice here, I feel like we'd be screwed. It's Atlanta. It's Tampa. It's a 51-point total. Tampa Bay at home. They're 1.5-point favorites. And Reeves, we've got Tevin Coleman and Julio. They're both being held out of practice. First off, do we expect them to play?
I would be real surprised if we see them really play a full allotment of snaps. I mean, Julio went through this last week. He played a season-low 24 snaps, just 50% of the team total. We saw he got the touchdown, but just 24 receiving yards. There's really nothing. There's no reason for them to really push the envelope with Julio. He's got a pretty big cushion for the receiving yardage lead. Really no press for him. That's really all they can really have him gun for. It's been a good year for Julio. Been a productive year. Let's just get him healthy. Wait till next year. I think I'm more interested in what they're going to do with Tevin Coleman, because if Tevin Coleman doesn't play, then we're probably going to get a full allotment of Brian Hill. I would love to hear Evan's take on Brian Hill, but I was digging up my running back model just to see where I had Brian Hill. Pre-draft, I had a pretty good objective grade on him. looking at him, I had him over guys like James Conner and Jamal Williams from an objective stance before, draft capital gets factored in. He was a guy who ran a 4.5, 4.40. He was a workhorse at Wyoming, 25 touches per game. He had over 1,700 yards, over 1,900 yards per game, more just like a straight line speed guy, north-south runner, not much agility to his game. Last week was the most carries he's ever had in an NFL game, just 8. And he turned him into 150 yards, obviously on the strength of that one long run. But if we're going to get him, he's like one of these guys. There's not a lot of these preseason type plays on the slate because the NFL has more of these teams playing for something than usual than we've had in these week 17s. But Brian Hill could be one of these, preseason type guys to come in, get, 15 to 20 touches against the team that's allowed the most touchdowns in the NFL to opposing backfields, and be kind of one of those those depressed, value type guys.
I'll tell you what, there's nothing that screams week 17 like, boy, this really could be a great Brian Hill week. Evan, what do you think about this Falcons offense? What do you think happens with Tevin Coleman? And are you interested in Brian Hill?
Yeah, so as for Julio, he has a 114-yard lead right now on Hopkins. And he's got a 121-yard lead on Mike Evans. So, I mean, my thought it has been that they are going to try to make sure that he leads the NFL in receiving yards. So I've been more optimistic on Julio, but you're right. I mean, he's, significantly short of 100%, and it doesn't make sense theoretically for them to push him. But I do have to believe that, leading the NFL in receiving yards is important to him. But maybe that only takes, 50, 60 yards. I think if he gets 50, 60 yards, he'd be in a really good spot. But I mean, look, Hopkins does have a tough matchup, but he can go off against anybody. Mike Evans in the same game is going to be coming after him. So that's going to be real interesting to see how they play that. As for Tevin Coleman, no practice on Wednesday. I mean, not looking good for him. Brian Hill is a guy that I know he looks good in terms of his workhorse production at Wyoming. He played there with Josh Allen. They were a run-first offense. And his metrics look good. I've never liked him in preseason. But he did break off a really big run last week. He also lost a fumble in the fourth quarter, but they don't really have anybody else. They picked up, they called up Jeremy Langford last week. So what's his, we got to adjust him for price. Is he really cheap, or what is his pricing looking like?
I mean, he's 3,900 over on DraftKings.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's just, you can fit him in, and look, if he's going to start, it's going to be a really tough fade against this Tampa Bay defense, right, Evan?
Yeah. I mean, he did not have very much receiving production at Wyoming. He had 1 target and no catches last week. The Falcons just don't throw to their running backs, which is one of the most discouraging aspects of their offense. I mean, seriously, what are you doing?
You had Devontae Freeman for a while. You got Tevin Coleman, and you're like, nope, can't do it. Don't want to risk it. It's a little silly.
There was a game around midseason where they fed Tevin Coleman 7 targets and Ito Smith 5 targets in the game. It was and they had their best offensive performance. I want to say it was against Washington. And both dudes tore it up in the receiving game, and they've just gone away. None of their running backs even had a catch last week. So that, that's always discouraging. Are you looking at Brian Hill on FanDuel, Reeves?
Not really. When I was messing around with initial builds, not really. I mean, more looking at the volume aspect on DK and seeing that 3,900 and the touchdown potential. And even if he catches 2 passes at 3,900 compared to the type of rushing volume and scoring ups that he had, I mean, he could hit pretty big there. He's 53 on FanDuel, nothing that you got to jam in. We can talk about some builds as we move on through the show. I mean, it's a curious week because I've talked about on this show a lot. I mean, I've just been a jam 3 running back in guy all year. It's just what has worked. Me and you text back and forth last week, and you wanted me to play the 2 receivers. It's I just can't, man. I was I've done one thing well all year. I'm just gonna keep sticking with it. I gotta rock the boat. But this might be a week where we don't have these big guys. If McCaffrey sits, I mean, you really only have Saquon at the top because Zeke's probably not. You can't trust Zeke. He's one of the few teams that we really can't trust their guys to play no matter what they tell us. So it might be one of those weeks where you have to take these guys like the Jamal Williamses and those types of cheap guys, and those are the running backs we play and build around. I set my running back rankings tonight on Rotoworld because we have to, and it is bad, man. It is real tough to set running backs. I mean, there's guys that you objectively don't like, and you just have to put in the top 15, but in DFS we don't have to play those guys. We can skip that pricing tier, and we can pay for guys receivers that we feel strongly about this week. We feel good about Devontae Adams and them chasing that record. We feel probably good about the Steelers guys this week. In a game that they have to win against the Bengals team that is just all but quit, and Drake or Patrick's probably not going to play. So we might be able to fit Antonio Brown and Devontae Adams together in a lineup because of a guy like Brian Hill or some of these other running backs. Or week 17 just might be one of those cattywampus weeks where we flip the script and just play cheap running backs.
Well, all year the whole pay up for running backs thing has worked, and I've personally been trying to do this pay up for wide receiver thing all year, and very clearly that has not been working all that well. But maybe this is the week. This is finally the week. And yeah, I'm with you on Devontae Adams. He feels very safe with a ton of upside this week. So, I mean, if we're not really sure if Julio is going to play, if we don't know about Tevin Coleman, Evan, can we feel good about anybody on this Falcons offense?
No. I mean, unless we get, Julio inactive, then I would say lean no. And then we could start looking at Calvin Ridley. But even last week, like Calvin Ridley had a nice box score. He definitely finally had a nice box score, but he got pretty much all of it on one play, which was a busted coverage by the Panthers. And, he had 5 targets. It's not like he all of a sudden exploded with his opportunity. Nothing has really changed. Austin Hooper has come back. Sanu also had a big box score, but it was the same sort of deal. Panthers blew coverage and gave up a 44-yard touchdown to him. So it's a lot of mouths to feed, and a team that isn't necessarily, as Reeves mentioned, isn't necessarily 100% motivated. So no, I mean, I think that they're all kind of dicey plays. Someone's going to have a good game. Maybe 2 guys have a good game, but no one that you can play with absolute confidence.
So on this Bucs side, we got a team that I feel like I've gotten wrong all year. Every time I play Mike Evans, he puts up 12 points. Every time I play Deshaun Jackson, he gets hurt. Cameron Brate scores a touchdown and has a grand total of 7 points at the end of the game. So, Reeves, who do we like on this Bucs side? Because this total is way too big just to ignore the game.
Jameis. I think it's Jameis. When you look at the week, how it's set up, and this could be Jameis's final game in Tampa, or it could be an audition for the next regime. And Jameis has played pretty well since he's taken back over. And he started off with like 3 really positive matchups, and now he's had 3 really hard matchups in a row. I mean, he played the Saints at home in like the rain. He played at Baltimore, which has been a terrible place for anyone to play. And he played in Dallas last week, who always, neuters game script. And he came out pretty positive in the game outside the turnover, that one for the touchdown. But 300 yards, completed 71% of his passes in that game. He has always had success against Dan Quinn's defense, even when they're healthy. He's getting a Dan Quinn defense now in week 17, finishing out the string of a season that's been a disappointment. He's been a top 12 fantasy scorer in 5 of 6 career games against the Falcons. He's thrown 3 or more touchdowns in each of their past 4 meetings, and that was including that 395 4-touchdown game early in the year when he made his first start of the season. So, I mean, I'm looking at his price, expected value, what he has to play for. I'm looking at all these things line up, and I'm looking at Jameis is probably going to be the guy that I lock in for, cash and double ups this week.
Interesting, because, I mean, Jameis is just a guy that, again, I never seem to get right with him. But if we're going to play him, Evan, I assume we're going to pair him with Mike Evans.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we mentioned, Mike Evans is within striking distance of the NFL receiving yardage lead. He also is a guy that he ranks number 5 in the NFL in air yards over the past 6 weeks. He's number 7 in the NFL in receiving yards. And the Falcons have given up the 3rd most touchdown catches to opposing wide receivers. I think we definitely will end up looking at Chris Godwin especially if there's no Djax. But Godwin has not played recently. Looks like Djax might not play. Cameron Brate, Dirk Cutter kind of revealed today that Cameron Brate has been injured all year, playing hurt all season long. And Mike Evans is like the healthiest member of this pass catcher core outside of Adam Humphries. And he's got, the big time, touchdown possibilities and a lot of yardage to play for if he wants to actually make a run at Julio for that NFL receiving.
Being a parent can be really challenging. It's normal to feel uncertain about whether you're doing the right things to raise healthy and happy children. That's why Child and Family Resource Network focuses on connecting pregnant parents and those with kids under the age of 5 with free support services to help them build confidence in their parenting journey. Everyone deserves to have someone they can turn to for support with parenting. Visit childandfamilyresourcenetwork.org today.
So, and he's really cheap on FanDuel. I mean, 7,300 I think is a really good price against Atlanta. Yeah, so I love that price on FanDuel for Mike Evans.
Yeah, 7-7 over on DK, a little bit more, but you can still play him just fine. All right, we got a couple blowouts next. Let's talk Oakland at Kansas City, 52.5-point spread. Kansas City, 13.5-point favorites at home. The Chiefs, they're looking to secure home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and if you need to secure home field advantage throughout the playoffs, Reeves, the matchup doesn't get much better than the Oakland Raiders.
At home, too. I mean, Oakland is a team that has just been miserable on the road. They've actually played pretty decently and played a lot of close games in Oakland. As their swan song in Oakland as it may be. But they have not played well on the road. I mean, you can even go back 2 weeks ago and they played a Bengals team that has just been flushed down the drain. They just no-showed that game. They got run out of the Bengals house. I mean, so a Chiefs team that has everything to play for, they can have a bye or they can drop down to the 4 seed. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for Oakland to go in here and really put something up. Derek Carr has just 7 touchdown passes on the road this year. He has never played well in Arrowhead. He's never been higher than QB 19. The Raiders have never scored more than 17 points with Derek Carr under center in Arrowhead, and the Chiefs themselves have been a lot better defense in Arrowhead. So it doesn't really line up well for the Raiders. But on the Chiefs side, I mean, it's easy. I mean, if you're gonna play a lot of these cheap guys, you can probably smash in Mahomes and finally pay for him. But we're probably not. I mean, the highest touchdown rate in the league, facing the team that's allowed the highest touchdown rate in the league defensively. You know, the Raiders have faced the fewest amount of pass attempts in the NFL, allowed the most passing touchdowns. And it's kind of a recipe for Patrick Mahomes to keep going off. And we saw what a guy like Travis Kelce did to him a few weeks ago. Travis Kelce almost dropped like a 250 game on him if a couple of those plays didn't come back. Tyreek's been kind of like he's left a lot on the field here. Recently, and it started with this game in Oakland where he just couldn't play the ball in that game, and the Thursday night game drops the touchdown. But I mean, he's still getting a ton of value, averaging 10 targets per game without Sammy Watkins. So I mean, you can just still make some stacks with him and get him involved in some tournaments because he's capable on that type of target volume to drop a 200-yard game.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Tyreek Hill kind of came back to life this week. That sort of feels like that week to me. Evan, what about you? Who are you targeting on the Chiefs? Because there are obviously a lot of mouths to feed here.
Yeah, just going to try to jam in as many guys as I possibly can, which at the end of the week might only be one guy because they are definitely expensive. But I want as much exposure as I can to the Chiefs side. The Raiders, I mean, this is like a very classic letdown spot for the Raiders. As Reeves mentioned, They've been terrible on the road. They're on a short week coming off a primetime win. And, I think that the Chiefs, especially after losing 2 games in a row, they've lost 2 games in a row, and they're likely to get a first-round bye. Their goal should be to just heat up the Raiders as much as they possibly can, maybe drop 50 on them. That should be their goal in this game. They need to finish this regular season strong because they're not going to be playing for a couple of weeks in all likelihood. And they just lost 2 games, and they're still a pretty young team. They have a first-year starting quarterback. I think that they are highly incentivized to just have their best possible effort, and I think that we will see it from them. With Tyreek Hill, I think he's pretty close to healthy. But I agree with Reeves that he's just straight up left a lot of yardage on the field. And whether, you could blame Mahomes on some of the throws, you could definitely blame Tyreek for not, securing catchable passes over the past 3 or 4 weeks. But there's been a lot of production left on the field. He did have 9 targets last week. He gets tackled inside the 5 seemingly every week. And, over these past few weeks. And, it seems like he's a guy that regression to the mean in a positive manner is going to hit him. And I think that this is a game where it should happen.
Yeah, like it really feels like a Mahomes to Hill just ball out spot. And again, it's tough to pay for him. Patrick Mahomes 7-1 over on DK, Tyreek Hill 8-4, so you're not getting any sort of discount, even though Tyreek Hill hasn't really been all that good lately. So, I mean, Reeves, what do we think of this running game? Is Spencer Ware, if he plays, is he somebody that we're going to target?
God, man, I wish he'd just sit out.
Are we sure he's better than Damian Williams?
I would love to get Evan's take on it for the kind of offense that the Chiefs have been running. Obviously, but then you say, well, they lost both those games. Damian Williams has had over 100 yards of scrimmage. The offense has stayed, on schedule. I mean, the Chargers game was just fluky. I mean, they were up 14 with 6 minutes to go. Teams don't really blow those types of leads. And then last week, playing in Seattle's tough, and they just fell behind, and they could never get that. It felt like they were just always a play away, play away. It just never happened for them.
Hey, running backs don't matter. That's what this means, right?
Right. But, I mean, Damian Williams has played well as a combo back, but then when you look at the game prior to where Spencer Ware was injured, I mean, he played combo back well against a defense that was much better against the Ravens, and he had 5 catches in that game. He had 20 touches compared to Damian Williams' 12. So I don't think it's fair to just say, Spencer Ware is, a worse player than Damian Williams or fits the offense, worse because the game before he was hurt, he was doing all those things anyways. It's just one of those situations where you'd rather have it be clear-cut one guy because we just don't know who's going to get the touchdowns and opportunities. It was Damian Williams in that game, but who could it be the next game? I mean, it's tough. I'm curious that Evans takes. He's got a clearer read on it than me. I mean, I just wish it was one guy.
Evan, what do you think about this Chiefs running back situation?
Spencer Ware was full practice on Wednesday. That's, about a strong indication as of Wednesday night that he's going to be back. And I just think it goes into a committee. Someone will probably have a good game. Your guess is as good as mine who that'll be. Damian Williams goes from, 13 to 17 touches, probably down to, 9 to 13. And Spencer Ware is probably in the same range in terms of a touch projection. So, I'm like Reeves. I wish that we had clarity. I'd love to play Damian Williams, at home against the Raiders, but looks like he's going to be in a shared backfield, and it's kind of a situation that you're just hoping to get lucky.
Yeah, I have no interest in messing with that situation. Another situation that I had no interest in messing with until he just rose from the grave was Jordy Nelson. Targets of 11, 7, and 8. He scored over 10 PPR points each of the last 3 weeks. Evan, can we believe in Jordy in this spot?
I mean, it's sustained volume. It's legit. He is averaging 9 targets per game over his last 4. He's catching everything. He's playing at a pretty high level right now. They're messing with Jared Cook's playing time again, and they're not messing with Jordy Nelson. This could actually be his final NFL game. There have been rumors that he could be retiring. He's 23rd among wide receivers in air yards over the last month. That's pretty good for him. He doesn't necessarily run a lot of deep routes, and he gets a lot of high percentage usage. He had 10 for 97 when these teams played in week 13. And if you're going to stack the game, I think that you bring it back with Jordy, and he's only 5,200 on FanDuel. I think he's pretty interesting. Yeah,
4,900 over on DK. And Reeves, he's the only guy in Oakland we're considering, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I think you can get cute in tournament play and look at Richard. I think he's probably going to have the highest volume here. The Chiefs just have been they've been just foolproof on like these types of running backs that hit. And even Richard he had 126 total yards the last time these teams played. There's volume for upside. Obviously he's not a cash guy by any means, but he'd be the other guy. I would say if you're going to run like a complete game stack, he'd be the other guy that could have production.
Yeah, that's just I can't play Jalen Richard, man. I just want to. I don't even want to play Jordy Nelson. Like I'm uncomfortable playing Jordy. He's just golly, like the dude's about to play his last NFL game. I know I played Kobe in that spot, but Jordy Nelson is not Kobe. Guy, there was a question in the chat about playoff scenarios. We're going to run through those after we talk about our third game because there are definitely some teams with stuff to play for. There are some teams with nothing to play for, and I'm basically going to be stealing what Alan Levitan wrote about on the DraftKings playbook. I thought he wrote a really good article, so I'm just going to kind of be running through what he's already written about. So let's go ahead and talk about our third game, another game that should be a blowout, and another game that matters. It's the Jets at the Patriots, 44.5 point total. New England, they're 13.5 point favorites at home. And Evan, is this Gronk's last regular season game?
I mean, I don't know if that matters, though, because I don't think that matters. Yeah.
He's just, oh, man. It's
do last regular season games matter?
It does for Jordy.
Well, but Gronk's going to go play in the playoffs.
I'm just messing with you. I just can't get over calling him a surfer.
I mean, he's going to wear a uniform in the playoffs.
He'll lumber along. He'll do a great job of moving slowly. All right, Evan, where are we going with the Pats here? Because Tom Brady, I don't know. I haven't played him all year, but obviously it's a great matchup. And I'll tell you what, it's tough to get a better matchup than Julian Edelman's going to get in the slot this week.
Yeah, I mean, Julian Edelman he's the only guy that you can bank on in the entire receiver core. He has 17 more targets than any other Patriot since their Week 11 bye. He's got 90-plus total yards and/or a touchdown in 9 of his last 10 games, and the Jets just get killed in slot coverage. So there's no, Julian Edelman is like about as safe a play as you could possibly come up with. I think this is another Sony Michel game, and I think that the Patriots passing game, with the exception of Edelman, has kind of reached a crossroads because we've got Rob Gronkowski, who he might be at his best as a blocker these days. Josh Gordon is, long gone. Tom Brady on pace for his second worst passer rating in the last decade. And they are number 3 in Football Outsiders adjusted line yards for run blocking. They have allowed the fewest tackles for loss in the NFL, so they're not giving up penetration to opposing defensive lines. Sony Michel is averaging 5 yards per carry on first down runs. So they have like a really good running game right now, and it's just starting to hit its stride. We saw it last week. I mean, they incorporated Cordero Patterson, Philip Dorsett. Rex Burkhead got 17 touches last week. But the offense right now, I think, is flowing through Sony Michel, and I think we'll continue to see that on Sunday. They're favored by almost 2 touchdowns. The Jets have not been good in run defense, 4.7 yards per carry allowed to opposing RBs over the last 6 weeks, 125-plus rushing yards allowed in 5 of their last 6 games, including 8 rushing touchdowns. So the game sets up perfectly for Sony Michel. He does not have a great floor because he never catches passes, but he's got a chance at 120, 150 rushing yards in this game with hopefully a touchdown or 2.
It kind of reminds me of the Nick Chubb situation last week, where you knew he wasn't going to catch passes, but like he was just going to get so much volume, it doesn't matter. And this does feel like a Sony Michel spot. We know the Patriots, they've kind of been saving. They're going to save James White for the playoffs a little bit. This is something they've done the last couple of years. Should be no surprise. And Reeves, I kind of think it's Michel and Edelman and move on. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we talked about Michel last week on this show at the end, and I talked about it on Ray. And so when the Patriots have always been double-digit favorites, not even in the circumstances now where they're really just geared to do this because they only have Julian Edelman in the pass game to rely on. I mean, Tom Brady's historically underperformed in these spots. He's been a double-digit favorite now 26 times since 2012. He's reached 20 fantasy points, just 7 of those games. But if you look at their RB1s in those games, they've just smashed. And we were in this spot a couple weeks ago. They ran for a season-high 215 yards when these teams last met. Sony Michel had 21 carries, basically off of injury. He played in that Titans game, but barely played, prior to that. And then if you look to a year ago, the Patriots were just in the same exact spot. They had to win to secure home field against the Jets the last week of the year, and they ran 38 times in the game. So we're probably going to be in another spot where they just stack, rushing attempts in this game. And, Sony's going to be that guy, and that's it. Basically, you guys laid out. Sony Michel, Edelman. I saw people trying to talk themselves into Hogan last week again. And what Hogan come out and do, man? Ooh, that cardio plan was hot. Dude, he was right before. He wasn't put. Listen, man, he was trying to shed those Christmas pounds early. There was no way. I saw people trying to talk themselves into Hogan, man.
We are Acrisure, an extraordinary advantage in insurance, real estate services, cyber services, asset management, and more. Find out what Acrisure can do for you at acrisure.com.
And he was out there. He played like 90% of snaps. I think he had two or three targets.
Well, it was funny because I was considering him until we were doing our show last week, and he said, dude, he's been running routes the whole season, and he's just not getting the targets. So, of course, I ended up at that cheap range playing Michael Gallup that obviously worked out for me. But, Hogan just unless he just catches, a long bomb on just a completely blown coverage, they're just not looking his way. Edelman might catch 15 balls in this one. Really. And I would set, Evan, over under 20 carries for Sony Michel.
Yeah, I would take the over. I think that's a pretty good line there. He's averaging 18.4 touches per game since their bye. He only had 18 carries last week, but I think that 20 is a good estimation there, and I'd still probably take the over.
Yeah, and on the other side, it's not quite as depressing as the Oakland side, even though it's the same spread and the total is lower here, because on the Jets side, we've seen Sam Darnold just feed Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson the last 2 weeks has just balled out. You were not winning anything last week because Robbie Anderson was 40% on in high stakes. And if you didn't have him, you were screwed because he went off. So, Evan, do you see this as another Robbie Anderson spot?
Yeah, I think that it's a little different because Bill Belichick is like a game planner, and he is going to do what he can to limit the impact of Robbie Anderson in this game. With that said, they kind of got lucky that they limited the impact of Robert Foster last week because he just lost an 82-yard touchdown in the sun. And otherwise he had 55 yards. That would have brought him to 130 yards and a touchdown. And that would have been a monster fantasy game if he just would have, been wearing sunglasses, I guess. But
I'd love to see him run around some Oakleys out there. Just no, guys, I got this.
But Robbie Anderson gets way more volume than him. We've seen some speed receivers take it to Stephon Gilmore this year, Bryce Butler in particular. And just the chemistry is in a really good place right now with Darnold and Robbie Anderson. And there's a serious trust factor going on there. And really, can anyone really cover Robbie Anderson, when he is running at full speed? This dude is 4.36 and he's long and he's tall. He's one of the toughest covers in the NFL. Sam Darnold over the last 3 weeks has the highest QBR of any quarterback in football. He led a comeback win at Buffalo, not easy to do. And then he was the quarterback 3 and the quarterback 7 in fantasy over the last 2 weeks. He's running more. He's averaging 15 rushing yards per game over his last 6 starts. He only averaged 3 rushing yards per game in his first 6. And he's just kind of taken over the offense because their OC is about to be fired. I think that, I think we're to the point in the season where you can't dismiss, the chemistry and the flow of an offense like this when it's really clicking. And the Patriots are not an imposing defense. They have some good players. They have some good players in the secondary, no question. But ultimately, they're really not, they're nothing close to a shutdown defense. And I think that, again, at this point in the season, you want to have a little bit of exposure to that Darnold to Robbie Anderson stack every week.
Yeah, it's just he's just looking for him so much, and Darnold looks pretty darn good to me at least. Reeves, what do you think about the Jets side here?
Yeah, I think it starts Robbie Anderson. I think you can definitely point to maybe some negatives, the same negatives you could have pointed to the matchup that was going in for Robert Foster last week. But I just don't think when you have a type of player getting those types of targets at the volume they're getting those targets, that you just can't fade those types of guys. You can't completely remove them off the board based on matchup because the volume of those types of targets carry so much weight in fantasy that inefficiency doesn't really come into play there. If Robert Foster catches that ball, Robert Foster could have had 140 yards in that game last week. You caught the lower end of the variance there, but there was, if you stuck with him and played him, there was still the upside there. It was present. You just left some plays in the field. So when you talk about Robbie Anderson, a guy that's got 38 targets over the past 4 weeks, and he's getting the types of targets he gets, it's hard to just say, I'm looking at the Patriots, they're third against the deep ball. I don't know, man. I'm just gonna not chase those types of targets. You can't. You gotta play them. You gotta hold your nose and play them. It's the same thing with Galladay a couple weeks ago. It's you just have to play those guys. They're getting those types of targets. It's been like that with Courtland Sutton the past few weeks. People have been wanting to play Deshaun Hamilton for all right reasons. Deshaun Hamilton's been fine. But when you get those types of touches or types of targets, the volume you're getting, those vertical shot plays, those end zone targets, those matter in fantasy football, no matter if they're hitting or not. that you play those. You want those you want to have consistency of those coming in and week out. That's what you have with Robbie Anderson right now. And I think the other guy that you could probably play, I think on DK I'm a little bit interested in, is Herndon, because we're going to have some passing volume. He's priced down. He's the tight end 6 overall in PPR since week 7. I mean, that says a lot about the tight end position in totality. From, outside of, basically when you get to George Kittle, beyond George Kittle, it's been terrible. Yeah. But, a season high 8 targets when these teams last played, season high 7 catches, probably be like a cheap PPR guy. Darnold has played well, but, I mean, we have the other thing that Baker's running into this week. Baker, another guy that's played well. Rookie QBs, 0-13 on the road against Bill Belichick. One guy has had a usable fantasy game in that stretch. It was Deshaun Watson, who did a lot with his legs. Patriots have won those games by an average of 17 points. Baker's in a similar spot where just rookie QBs are 1-10 since John Harbaugh has taken over the Ravens in Baltimore. So, I mean, 2 rookies I'm going to be looking to see if they can flip those trends this week are Darnold and Baker.
Evan, who's going to be your rookie of the year? Is it Baker or is it Saquon?
Yeah, I mean, look, Saquon has had an unbelievable year. He's in the running for, a lot of just all-time marks for rookies. I mean, if he gets 14 catches on Sunday, he will tie Anquan Bolden for the most catches all time by a rookie. That's pretty awesome.
That's incredible.
He slowed down the last couple of weeks, so he's not going to contend for Eric Dickerson's all-time mark for yards from scrimmage by a rookie running back. But he's had an unbelievable year, and he's really good at his job. He's really good at his job. But Baker Mayfield, I think, what he's been able to do, giving hope to an entire freaking city, and with the level that he has played at in the second half of the year, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. You can give Offensive Rookie of the Year to Saquon, and you can give what is it? What's the other rookie award? Actually, there isn't even one, is there?
I don't know.
Yeah,
that's typically how the league plays MVP. They always MVP is just a quarterback award, and then they give whoever has an awesome running back year is Offensive Player of the Year, like Gurley was.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no question.
Come on, do better, NFL.
The right answer here is Baker Mayfield. I mean, I think
I would agree with you, but I'm also a big time Baker fan, so I was making sure I just wasn't being wasn't being biased. All right, real quick, I'm going to run down playoff scenarios because we had somebody in the chat asking, and people are going to be listening to this podcast for the next few days. So this is it. And again, I'm pulling this from Adam Levitan's the DK Playbook. He wrote this article. He writes it every year, and it's really, really good just as a point of reference to find out, okay, where do I need to go? What games matter? What players are going to be playing? So here we go really quick. The Chiefs, if they win, they're going to clinch the number 1 seed. If the Patriots, they must win to clinch the number 2 seed. The Texans, they have to win to clinch a first-round home game. The Ravens, they got to win to make the playoffs, but they're pretty I like their spot here. The Chargers, they have to win and have the Chiefs lose to earn the number 1 seed. And then, of course, you've got the Sunday night game between the Colts and the Titans. Winner makes the playoffs. I cannot believe the Titans are favored in that game, but hey, whatever. And then the Steelers, they have to win, and they have to have the Ravens lose to make the playoffs. So those are kind of the 8 teams in the AFC that are really looking for stuff. In the NFC, the Saints, they're locked in. We'll talk about that situation in a second. The Rams, they have to win. They're going to clinch the number 2 seed in the first round bye. The Bears, if they win and the Rams lose, they clinch the number 2 seed. The Rams ain't losing this week. Cowboys, they're locked into the 4th seed. Don't expect them to be playing their starters a whole lot, if at all. The Seahawks, they're either going to be the 5 or 6 seed. Not a ton to play for. The Vikings, they have to win to clinch a playoff berth. And the Eagles, they have to win and have the Vikings lose to clinch a playoff berth. How did I do, Evan?
I mean, I thought that was excellent, Adam.
Yeah, thanks. I know. I mean, I straight just read it from Adam's article. Right? I mean, sorry, but it's he wrote the best thing here. We're reading it. I gave him credit. Whatever.
Absolutely.
Let's talk some other quarterbacks on this slate, because I think one of the guys that we haven't really talked about yet, we mentioned the receiver in passing, but Aaron Rodgers. And to me, Reeves, the Aaron Rodgers to Devontae Adams stack is about as lock and load as you can get.
Yeah, it's pretty strong. I mean, the one thing is there's a couple things from last week that definitely you can't count on. One is that dude, he had 17 fantasy rushing points last week, Aaron Rodgers. Probably not going to get those. He also threw and he also had so much passing volume. Won that game in overtime, and 2 it was a shootout. He's playing the Lions, who just cripple play volume in games. So it's going to be a game where he has to live on that efficiency. Now, Aaron Rodgers is a guy we could count on living on efficiency against the team that is 31st in yards per attempt allowed to opposing passers. They're 31st in touchdown rate. The Lions are. But I would say if you're chasing like a 40-point banger from last week, probably not going to get it against the Lions team, who are they just kind of ruin games. They ruin football altogether. So, I mean, I'm in the stack. I think that they're going to just pepper Devontae Adams, man. Like, he's just going to get so many targets again this week. So, I mean, I'm in. I like Josh Allen this week. I was off Josh Allen last week because of the Patriots stuff I brought up earlier. But I think this is a fun week. We got Josh Allen in his final game. He's at home against the Miami team that is another team like Oakland. Like, they just have not traveled. He ran for $135 the last time these teams played. The Dolphins have allowed at least 15 fantasy points to each of the past 4 quarterbacks they faced. Top 12 scorer, 3 of those past 4. I think it sets up well for his receivers this week. I think you can run some interesting Bill stacks. I mean, here we are, week 17, talking Bill stacks. Robert Foster's in a good spot. The Dolphins allow a lot of splash plays, tied for 6th in the league. The amount of 20-yard pass plays allowed. He's averaging 23 yards per depth of target since Josh Allen returned to the lineup. Robert Foster has 111 air yards per game. Zay Jones will be moving back into the slot now because Isaiah McKenzie got carted for like the 4th time in 2 weeks. And slot guys have just crushed Miami. So, I mean, we're going to get some interesting pairing there. I like, Josh Allen to bounce back, and have another ceiling type of game.
What about you, Evan? Who are some of the quarterbacks you're looking at?
Yeah, speaking of the Lions, how about Patricia? He shows up late to team meetings and stuff.
I was reading that. It's so bizarre. Like, our coach is just like the most anal people in the world about being on time. Like, it's just, it's bizarre.
And the Lions, not only do they suck in fantasy, but they make your other fantasy players playing them suck. They're like that friend that, like, when they're having a bad day, like, they're going to bring you right down with them. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're going to make sure.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right, so who are some of the other quarterbacks you're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about, Nick Foles. Like, is he still in play? I kind of think he is.
I mean, the guy, you just, like, build the statue, right?
How awesome was that playing him last week? That felt like that.
I mean, I don't know. I played. He wasn't even the highest scoring quarterback in his game. Like, whatever.
Sean, baby. We were on that one, though, man. Listen,
yeah,
guys,
I know. I finally got Deshaun Watson. I could not believe he was
overs hit.
I cannot believe he was completely unowned either. Like, Deshaun Watson was under 5% in tournaments.
Yeah. Our overcalls crushed last week.
You think?
I don't know. Quarterbacks. I don't know. I think Reeves kind of nailed them all. I mean, I wanted to get 40 snaps of Taysom Hill. I think that would be fun, but that isn't going to happen.
We're going to get Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, but I mean, with a bunch of backups, throwing to Kevin Arnold. So
I mean, why shouldn't they play Taysom Hill though? Bridgewater's not going to be on the team next year. Yeah. Like, why not give him an extended look and just see what he can do? I mean, what playing Teddy Bridgewater kind of makes no sense unless you're just worried exposing Taysom Hill because he plays the Jose Oquendo role, plays like every position on your team. But why not play him?
Yeah, and I totally hear you. I think that the reason is there's no incentive for them to give the rest of the league 40 snaps worth of tape on Taysom Hill, and there is incentive for them to get Bridgewater a game before the playoffs in case they got to use him, right? So, but I totally hear you. I love the call on Josh Allen. I think he has a big game. I think he could have a really big game against Miami and. Ben.
Yeah, the game that they have to win, Ben's just going to ball out here.
Yeah, Ben should absolutely crush. This is another prime bounce back spot, on the road. I mean, shoot, they were a great testament to defenses don't matter. They had a great game offensively against what had been the best defense in the NFL for the previous 6 weeks. Ben was the QB4 in fantasy. And now they go back home to face the worst defense in the NFL, allowing league highs in points per game, yards per play, everything. So I think Ben should absolutely drop bombs on Cincinnati.
What about Lamar? The price has come down. He's 5.6K now on DK. Obviously we're not going to get a ton of passing volume, but any interest in Lamar for you, Evan?
No, not for me. I mean, I just think that the ceiling just isn't there,
Okay.
because just the passing game hasn't. I mean, he just hasn't put it all together. I mean, last week he actually had a decent passing game. That's how he got the bulk of his points. But he didn't have the big rushing game. The Browns, I think, are absolutely going to play this game to the fullest, and it wouldn't surprise me if they won this game. How about
Cleveland? Cleveland wants to beat Baltimore so bad.
Oh yeah.
They
already beat them once this year, so they have that level of confidence. They're riding high with Baker. I mean, they're 5-1 in their last 6. They've got a legit good team. Their team is good.
Just think, had they fired Hugh Jackson 3 weeks earlier, they'd be in the playoffs.
This is a big deal for me, for him. Not Baker. I think he's good, but for the Browns in general, and all this talk about their coaching staff and should the Browns keep Greg Williams, isn't it stupid? But listen, man, the Browns, they played as well as they played and not take anything away from them. Like, this is a big deal for Greg Williams to beat a good team. They played one good team over that stretch, and they got smoked. They got smoked in that game against the Texans. They were never in it. So to go into Baltimore and for them to have a strong showing and to possibly win that game would go a long way for a guy like Greg Williams and Freddie Kitchens. I mean, because you look at it, I mean, listen, man, Baker's played such a high level, and the plays, everything they've done has exponentially been better. But they need to give us at least a taste of them being able to do it against a formidable opponent, and they haven't given us that yet. It's the last hurdle that Baker and this offense needs to do. They need to give us a big game against a really good defense. They've got an opportunity for it, so against the Ravens team has everything to play for in their house. So this is I'm really highlighting that game as one to watch intently on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that might be the best game to watch, just because you've got two quarterbacks that are a lot of fun to watch with Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield. Plus, you got Cleveland wanting revenge on the Ravens for leaving town. It's just like everything here lines up for a really, really fun game to watch. Let's talk some running backs. Evan, are we going to feel comfortable enough with Todd Gurley? Because if he goes, man, he's just too cheap. Like, you just got to play him.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's going to go. So he's not, he's not someone that I've really looked hard at yet. I've been looking more at just the value guys. We already talked about Brian Hill. I kind of, want to talk myself into Royce Freeman. He's 4,700 on FanDuel.
35 on DK.
Yeah. So, but, he hasn't been great this year, especially in the second half since coming back from the high ankle sprain. But, I mean, they are incentivized to give him a lot of carries with no Phillip Lindsay. But they're facing a Chargers team that has a lot to play for, is clearly better than them, by a distance. What's the spread on this? It opened. Yeah, it opened as Chargers -4.
It's 6.5 now.
Yeah, and it's been bet up toward a touchdown. That's not good for Royce Freeman.
Yeah, and Freeman's not the kind of guy that can catch passes in a negative game.
No. It could be a disaster. I mean, it could end up being a Devontae Booker game. He's probably your play on DK. But
how about I just play neither of them?
That's fine too. Jeff Wilson is back in position against the Rams. Same kind of concern. We have seen Jeff Wilson have a big game in terms of receptions. However, and the 49ers have been, they've been a tough out down the stretch. They're playing real hard. And so I think that Jeff Wilson is kind of interesting. I don't know. I've been focused on the cheaper guys. Jamal Williams is an awesome spot against Detroit. I know the Lions have been better against the run recently, but they also placed a couple of big-time defensive linemen on injured reserve recently. And, I mean, Jamal Williams played 85 of 90 snaps last week.
That's a lot.
No other running back on the Packers even touched the ball. And now he's at home as an 8 to 10 point favorite, depending on where you look, and facing this dead Detroit team that really has nothing to play for. Their coach doesn't even show up to the team meetings on time.
This is hilarious. Reeves, you got any other running backs to talk about?
Oh, that's pretty good. Pretty much coverage. Jamal Williams, I feel like you just gotta play him. Just do it. What scares me about Royce Freeman is that I think it started to creep up the last few weeks with Phillip Lindsay, is that the Broncos lost like a ton of offensive linemen in the middle of the year. They lost Ronald Leary. They lost Matt Paradis, their starting center. And like Lindsey was like fine afterwards. He's that type of runner. If he gets a crease and he hits it, he's gone. But we saw the last few weeks when he wasn't getting on those yards before contact, and he's not like an elusive type of running back. He's just like a shot out of a cannon guy, and it's hurt his production. And I don't think Royce Freeman's a guy that can overcompensate bad O-line play.
Yeah, I would say not.
I like Royce Freeman. I think he's a real solid player. He definitely was outplayed by Phil Lindsay. He deserved to step aside for that job. It's just that I don't think he's that type of a player. And like you guys talked about, he's not going to overcome Devontae Booker in the passing role. So he makes him a real tricky play in a game where the Chargers have to win, or not have to win, but just they're probably going to play out for like a good stretch unless they're really scoreboard watching and see the Chiefs are just roasting the Chargers or the Raiders, and the Chargers like kind of ease off the throttle. So Jamal Williams, I wish we knew what Seattle was going to do, because I mean Chris Carson's in another smash spot, but kind of a riskier play. Coming off a lot of touches again. Arizona is they faced a league high 35 touches per game. No matter who they face, the guy just lights them up. If the Seattle's going to play all out, he probably makes some more of a tournament play, because they have to win and don't have to win. I don't know if they care. I just don't know if they really care, because they're in. If they care about being the 5 seed or the 6 seed, I don't know if teams really, if they're objectively look at that stuff. If Pete Carroll really cares, he might. Maybe he wants to go to Dallas instead of Chicago. But I think that those are both teams that they probably feel that they can confidently beat. They could play a muck it up game with Chicago and hang around for sure. Definitely traveling to Chicago is going to be a problem. What do we think about James Conner coming back?
I was hoping one of you guys were going to bring him up. I love James Conner this week.
Because no matter what the Steelers have shown us, whether it was Le'Veon Bell, D'Angelo Williams, Conner, or Jalen Samuels, like, hey man, if you're good to go, like it's your backfield. Like, so is he just gonna walk right back into an auto smash spot against the Bengals in like a game where they're like home double-digit favorites? Because then he's gonna be like right up there. It's like a top 5 play.
Yeah, I don't really see a reason to feel bad about James Conner at all. Like, I love him this week. What about you, Evan?
I have a strict anti-high ankle sprain policy that I cannot go against that, man.
All right, well, I don't want you to leave your high ankle sprain policy. So
yeah.
What you asked Evan about Gurley? So like, let's just assume Gurley's out, because I think me and Evan are both on the side that he's going to be out. Are you chasing that CJ Anderson ghost?
No, I'm not gonna. I said a lot, dude. I was doing my Sunday morning show last week, and I don't think I've ever been mocked by the chat room as much as I was when I said, if Gurley's out, you need to get CJ Anderson in your lineups. Like, I was pretty adamant about it. Like, CJ Anderson's gonna be on the slate winning team if Gurley's out, and then he wasn't even available on FanDuel. No, I know, that's what I mean. Yeah. You had been playing on Fantasy Draft or Yahoo, and Fantasy Draft it was really speculative over there because there's no late swap. But no, I'm not chasing CJ Anderson. Like, CJ Anderson's great when he's minimum price. When he's priced over 5K on DK, I just don't have a lot of interest.
I wouldn't even have started him in the season long last week. Like, I would not.
I mean, if you'd like, I can work with you on some stuff if you really want.
I did want to mention the Cowboys-Giants game. So, the Cowboys keep saying, oh, yeah, we're going to play our starters. Like, sportsbooks are not buying this for a second, dude.
Well, they didn't do it last year either, did they? They said they were going to.
It was 2 years ago.
Dude, they said they were going to, and then they were just like, whoopsie daisy, no thank you.
So right? The Giants opened as 3-point favorites, so the sports books, like, they already had it built in, that expectation. And not only have they lowered the total of the game, but they have moved it to 6 to 7 points in the Giants' direction. So the more that the Cowboys have come out and said, yes, we're playing our starters, the more the line has moved toward the Giants side.
That's not a good sign.
No, it's not a good sign.
Yeah. By the way, I think, like, if I really might just lock in Saquon this week, because I understand that everybody's talking about, there are a lot of good value running backs, but I'll still take the upside with Saquon. And I don't think ownership's going to be lowered just because it's freaking Saquon and everybody plays him, but I just want to be overweight on him no matter what, because the upside of that
114 yards for 2,000. He'd be the third rookie running back ever with Dickerson and Edge. So, kind of a big deal.
Yeah. All right, let's talk some wide receivers. And we were talking about paying up for wide receivers, and there are a lot of them to pay up for. You got Antonio Brown in a spot where he wants to do well. Michael Thomas, I'm not touching, obviously, but Tyreek, Juju, Hopkins, Devontae Adams is a guy that everybody's going to play, probably rightfully so. Reeves, who are some of these wide receivers that you're looking at?
I talked about the Bills guys a little bit for junk. I know no one ever likes to play those guys. He missed practice today, but I was really eyeballing Kenny Galladay earlier in the week, just because, the Packers are awful. They've allowed the most touchdowns to opposing lead receivers. Obviously, Robbie A hit there last week, and the passing volume is just so high for a guy like him. But he missed practice. You got to stick a pin in that one. But he's a great cross-stack guy. Evan Ingram, you just keep playing. I know he's not a wide receiver, but just keep playing him. I mean, it doesn't make sense not to. He's had his 3 highest receiving yardage games of the season the past 3 weeks without Odell. So just keep playing him. You probably get him against some backups. I don't know. Who else you guys got?
Anybody for you, Evan?
Yeah, just talking about some cheaper guys. It looks like Kendrick Bourne is going to be the only receiver available on Sunday for the 49ers. So I think that he's at least mildly interesting. He's super, super cheap. Dante Pettis is already out. Marquise Goodwin not practicing. So it'd be just a cast of Trent Taylor and, Richie James at receiver for San Francisco. We talked about Jordy, and we didn't talk very much about Godwin. But, man, Godwin's price has come way down. I know he has not been productive, but this is a great spot for him as a bounce-back candidate, especially if Deshaun does not play. Other than that, we kind of covered most of the guys I think that I'd be looking at.
Yeah, and the thing with Godwin, in my mind, I want to compare him a little bit to Courtland Sutton whenever everybody plays him. And, even though maybe the production hasn't necessarily matched it, the difference is Courtland Sutton had never gotten there. Chris Godwin earlier in the year, man, 16, 17, 17, 20, 24. Chris Godwin gets there when he's got the opportunities. Now, of course, we don't know if Deshaun Jackson's going to play. I doubt that Deshaun Jackson plays. I don't know why he would play, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if Chris Godwin had a big win here. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. This is the last DFS Pick 6 of the regular season, but in case you missed it earlier in the show, we ain't done. You get us for the next 2 weeks for a little bit of playoff DFS Pick 6, so make sure you tune in next week. We don't have the exact time yet. I believe it's going to be at 9 o'clock Eastern, so it might be a little bit earlier, but make sure you tune in. Check into RotoGrinders to find out exactly when that's going to be, and we can't wait to talk to you once we got some playoffs set. I'm pumped, guys. We got to get out of here, though, so for Evan, for Rich, I'm Eric. We'll see you guys later. Peace.